Economic Alliance presents the Gulf Coast Growth Show, your show for the coast with the most growth, with your host, Jason Lee and Clint Akin.
And we are live, and welcome to the Gulf Coast Growth Show.
Woohoo! Number 10.
Number 10. All right. I'm Jason Lee, your host, and this is Clint Akin, my co-host.
And this is your show for the coast with the most growth.
Fantastic. And we are here to talk about workforce development today, and specifically about developing the next generation, their skills and their talents. So ultimately, it's about what are we doing for that next layer of individuals that are coming up in the industry. And so we're here with an industry professional with over 30, 40 years of experience, Mr. Daryl Brister. And before we talk a little bit about what Daryl's experience is, and really he's going to share some great stuff with us today, Clint was going to highlight our sponsors.
Absolutely. I also want to start off by thanking Industrial Safety Training Council, McDonough Engineering Corporation, and Turner Industries. We appreciate their support of the show.
Fantastic. And so Daryl, 30, 40 years
Yes.
out in the field, making things happen. You got the boots to prove it. Would love to hear a little bit about your background and why you were a great person to bring in the show to talk about this topic.
Well, I don't know about the great part, Jason,
Yeah.
but thank y'all for having me in today. I've really enjoyed the show, by the way. Been watching and catching all the episodes that you guys have been doing, so great content that y'all are putting out there. A little bit about me. Grew up in South Louisiana, started my career working in the petrochemical industry along the Mississippi River as an electrician, an instrument tech. Ended up going to work for Amoco in one of their gas processing plants. Unfortunately, safety was not at a premium there during the early 80s. That led me to be concerned about some of the things. We had a lot of people getting hurt in the workplace. The drilling side, we had some fatalities on the drilling side during that time with some of the contractors that were out there. Me and some other guys kind of raised concerns about the lack of attention to safety. So I didn't know the term culture then, but we did not have a strong safety culture. And on February the 12th, 1996, one of our plants blew up. A guy that I had trained and mentored at the plant died in my hands while we waited on a life flight to come.
Brutal.
So coming out of that event really made me realize there had to be more than just training people, right? Because that was the big thing that got pushed with us, is getting the training. And most of that was on the job training, and it was quite informal, and you relied on the person that had been in front of you to pass that knowledge on to you. Unfortunately, in my generation, the men in front of me didn't want to share the knowledge. Now, I'm not faulting them. They kept me and my other peers safe, of us younger guys who came in almost 40 years ago into operations. They didn't let us mess up the equipment. But ultimately, it was the mentality was, well, I had to sink or swim. And obviously, I swam because I'm here. So you kind of got thrown into the deep end to see if you could survive. And that's pretty much what took me through my career, learning, developing my own self. And back in those days, we didn't have procedures. We had very few drawings, if any. So I actually got API books to teach me about gas processing and how to learn the plant and how to troubleshoot and how to figure it out. So I did all that on my own. Matter of fact, when I asked my boss for the books, he was not happy. They didn't want to provide the books back then.
They do cost a premium. Let's be honest. I mean, they're a couple $1,000s for some of those books, especially back then. So.
But it was a big benefit to me and a lot of the other guys that got to use them, and is what kind of got my career rolling and developing my competence. So the flip side to training is, how can you demonstrate that you're competent, that you have the skills and ability to do the job that the company's asking you to do. And ultimately, that's taken me to where we are here today. So 5 years ago, after a 28-year career with BP and Amoco, or Amoco BP, I guess it is, I ended up flying the world for them, helping implement their competency management system for operations technicians.
And how would you, sorry to interrupt, but
No.
Can you again just define competency for our audience?
Yeah, sure. So
It's a big word.
it is a big word. We're actually going to be talking about it next week at the EHS conference in Galveston. But people mean different things by competence,
Right.
or competency, or to say a person is competent. So a competency, or the ability to demonstrate competency, is being able to do a job, a task repeatedly to a written standard, or that could be a procedure in a plant, and that you follow that and you base your judgment on that, rather than, I just think I know how to do it. So my ability to do a task or a job repeatedly to a written standard, and then you can measure that, rather than have somebody's personal opinion as to you're competent, you're not yet competent, you're still working on that skill.
So it's a little bit more of an objective approach.
It's a much more objective
approach
report from a legal standpoint, that you're actually measuring. Where we just finished a case study with one client where they brought all of our assessors in to assess to their standards for each discipline: the electrician, the instrument tech, the operator, the control room person.
Okay.
And we get to impress those fancy analytic geeks like myself who really like key performance indicators or KPIs.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? And speaking of competency, if you want to let us know how we're doing and whether or not we're being competent or incompetent, you can always chime in and add comments or notes on the page, as well as follow up afterwards on the show
Absolutely.
as well on the Facebook page. So please let us know how things are going. Give us some feedback. So Daryl, I think you just said specifically a case study, and I think you were going to share some examples of what you've seen out there and really how competency has impacted an organization. You have a sample for us, and so I think the audience that's tuning in, it would really behoove them to know how has this impacted the other companies that are out there, and then also why it might benefit them.
Yeah. So since starting this company 5 years ago this month, how do we pay it forward to the next generation workforce? What our client and clients, as well as all of the folks that are working in industry, and we don't just focus on oil and gas or the energy industry. We're looking at jobs everywhere where safety and technical skills are required to undertake the job that you're hiring somebody to do. In the case of our client with the case study, they were building a $5 billion facility, biggest to date, with the latest and greatest technology. Typically, when a lot of these big companies are able to build a new facility, they tend to pull from their more competent, capable workforce at other facilities and other locations to create a project team. And then with a set of skilled, capable, known resources, they start the project, they start the hiring process, they really work real hard on the interviewing and vetting of those individuals as they come into the project. What we're finding in the industry and what the numbers show, Dr. Gustavo talks about how you have 34 million traditionalist generation, you have 79 million baby boomer generation, you have 68 Gen X generation, and you have 79 million Gen Ys or millennials that are out there. Mm. So we have, for the first time in U.S. history, we have 4 generations in the workforce. You think about the mindset of each one of those generations.
Very different.
And we're all, and our focus is on next generation workforce. So the Gen Xers, and particularly the millennials, right? So the traditionalists pretty much have gone from the workforce. The data shows us from Pew Research that just came out a few years ago that the 84 million baby boomers will be gone by 2030, 2035, replaced by the 68 million Gen Xers, which leaves a huge gap and competition for the 79 million millennials that are coming in. And by the way, millennials are staying less than 2 years with a company. So you think about how that impacts your safety. Mm-hmm. You get somebody trained up and then they're leaving you statistically. You have to retrain. So there's a lot of risk that come into that. Well, this is what this company was faced with. So what they decided to do was implement a competency management system. So clear job descriptions, competency profiles, a competency standard developed that fit each one of their job roles. So like we said, electrician, mechanic, operator. And ultimately, what they call process task mapping. So here's all of the tasks associated with each one of your competencies, and that competency standard defined 2 things within it. What do you know and understand? What can you do? And then the assessor's job was to follow that standard, measure that individual. The trained and qualified assessor we talk about is neutral. They're Switzerland. They have no skin in the game. My job is to look at Clint and say, here's what Clint's job is, in his company is to know these things and to be able to do these things. And so the assessor says, Clint, tell me about it. Either he could or he couldn't. Clint, show me how you do this task right here. Either he can or he can't. Mm-hmm. And they just look at what's defined right there, and then ultimately the outcome is Clint can demonstrate competency based on the company standard on these 10 things, but in this one area, Clint did not meet the requirements of the standard. Therefore, now I can focus my training, my development, that skill set, as I call it, for Clint in that one area right there, rather than this sheep dip approach. An event happens and everybody gets retrained.
Right.
I like that process because it allows you to, I think employees, at first are hesitant because they're like, oh, I'm being evaluated. It's scary, right? But, ultimately they get the training that they really need. And so you're not wasting resources, spending time training on something that they're perfectly competent in, right? So, there's a lot of advantages to doing it that way.
So like a Zoom focus, right?
Well, it does. And so the thing that we're missing, so here's the thing, right? When I showed up 40 years ago, I had a bunch of gray-haired, no-haired guys who kept me from killing myself or blowing the plant up. They didn't share a lot of information. Our sons, my 2 millennial boys, both of them working in industry, have shown up. And guess what? They don't have a me standing in the workplace that's been doing this for 20, 25 years. So yes, I get all of my compliance safety training. Yes, I get some online CBTs about here's how the plant works. Here's how we crack this molecule. Here's how we do these things. And then ultimately they're kind of cast out there to go run it. And we probably have a lead guy that says, don't let him hurt himself. But that lead guy is spinning more plates today because there's fewer of those more competent individuals. And that's where the rub is on the road, is that you're losing the capacity in the workplace. Your boomer generation will be completely gone they'll be 65 to 70 years old.
Right.
So you're going to have to pay them an exorbitant amount of money and convince them to stay on longer with you. And so we've got to move from just training people into competency management, which means let me see you do it, Clint. Let me see you do it, Jason or Daryl. And then have a standard that you measure by objectively. Again, I'm neutral. Either you can do it or you can't do it. And so that's what this client saw. Mm-hmm. So there were 56 technicians across 6 different job disciplines. The knowledge assessments, 1,786 assessments just on knowledge based on each one of the competency profiles if you totaled it all up. We did all of those first, walking around the equipment during commissioning while the plant was not live, talk about this, trace down this pipe and tell me. And all of this was written out in their competency standard for the electrician, for the instrument tech. And then once the management made a decision to wait on the performance side and said, let's get the plant up and running, get the bugs lined out, and then we'll come back. So then they brought the assessors back once the plant was running and started doing the performance assessments, again, right out of the standard, let me see you do this. So observing them in the workplace, tracing down systems, talking about what has happened here, what would happen here, what would you do there, all based out of the standard, not the assessor's personal opinion or experience. And by the way, the assessors were electricians, were instrument techs, and the client actually verified their competency. So in other words, they didn't just say, hey, bring us in an electrician. They actually, when we brought these people in and they were trained and qualified, in some cases certified as an assessor, their competency was vetted by the engineers, the mechanical engineer, the instrumentation electrical engineer. They actually vetted their competency. They could answer all the questions, right? And so therefore, and then of course their ability to actually assess and just measure to show, are there any gaps? And then ultimately what happened, they also did the leadership too. So they developed the leadership standards. There were 5 different leadership positions in the operator that would be running that plant, from the plant manager all the way down to the frontline supervisors. And then that was phase 3. All of those leaders, well actually all those leaders are still being assessed. They're about 90% complete right now with assessing, as you might imagine, the soft skills. Right. How you do critical thinking, how do you do situational awareness, how do you support your staff, how do you hold your staff accountable, reward as well as consequences that are out there. Right. So ultimately they found a 10% gap in the 57 technicians that they had in total. There was a 10% gap. which means with the competency profile and the new job descriptions, they did a much better job on hiring. So asking better, more appropriate questions to determine the person's knowledge. Because right now, the resume is just 3 sheets of paper with a bunch of words on it, right?
Right.
So how do I know you can do what you say that you've done or that you can do?
Right.
And so it's about asking those questions, putting them in testing situations, then making a decision to hire them. So that actually validated their interview process was a much more better, robust system to help them hire the right person. Now, they did have a few people that they let go. They brought in some new people. A couple of people actually decided they didn't like it when one guy decided he didn't like it once he got in.
Oh yeah, I don't like people inspecting my actual work.
Because there's that dirty word, accountability.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's a dirty word.
And the thing that was fascinating to me, we did some interviews with, so this company intentionally hired what I call green technicians. So if you think about San Jacinto, HCC, Lone Star, we've been working with Patty Bell going into high schools trying to get young people to consider careers in the trades like a mechanic, an electrician, instrumentation guy. They deliberately hired these young people out of the 2-year degree program. And one of the young men they hired, instrument automation degree, 2 years, his first career job, had never worked in the energy industry, had never worked in a big giant plant like this before. But they wanted to intentionally so my astronaut buddy, who was a Navy test pilot before he became an astronaut, they want people in the Navy to have never flown before so they can train them how to fly the Navy way.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
Right? So the company, we call them Acme Gas. Acme Gas wanted this young recruit or these young recruits to learn the Acme way of how we do things around safety, around procedures, around practices and policies. And now
Then you don't have to unlearn stuff.
That's right.
That
You don't
happens,
have to unlearn. And now you have a competency standard. And it was very telling if you listen to his testimony that he wrote down about how much he appreciated the fact that it was all written out for him. He said during the assessment process, he realized the things that he was doing had an impact on the whole plant. And he said that was eye-opening for me to know that what I'm doing here can actually impact the whole plant if I get it wrong. And then he said and that was another thing he said too, was it started making him think about who he should talk to, which is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because these young people come in, they don't know anything, especially if guys aren't sharing that tribal knowledge with them, they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
But having gone through the competency assessment,
It's also hard to initiate those conversations.
Right.
he was like,
you don't want to come across as incompetent.
Right.
he was like, I need to talk to Clint, I need to talk to Jason because they have the information that will help me this. And then after he finished all of his assessments, his assessor, who was a top shelf INA tech, actually started giving him coaching tips on ways that he could strengthen his skill set and be a much smarter, brighter instrument automation technician as he advanced his career, where to go look for stuff, what to do, which he thought was just amazing. This guy was kind of pouring into him his 40 years of knowledge doing instrument controls, automation controls, logic controls. So anyway.
Well, no, I mean, I think having had George on here,
And Jim Griffin, too.
And Jim Griffin,
Yeah,
right.
If you haven't seen those episodes, go back and watch those.
go back and
You'll
watch
learn a
those,
lot.
because it really parlays into the conversation that we're having here, is that the region has taken a significant amount of ownership, and this next generation, tooling them up. We've got the new petrochem facility coming out at San Jack, and then these people are coming out, but then they're walking into the plant with more of an equipped mindset to not have to unlearn bad behaviors, learn the appropriate behaviors when they walk in. We talk about competency, and I remember it's the path of least resistance was always training. When I used to run multiple units for health clubs, and so I ran 18 locations, and it was easy. Everybody says, "Well, can you come in and teach training class and train my people?" I'm like, then they're like, "Okay, well, they're trained." Well, that's not training.
Training doesn't equal competency.
The training does not equal competency. That's repetition, and knowledge. And like you had just mentioned, tribal knowledge. And so if you can take that tribal knowledge, transfer it to some documents, some actual things that would be on site that they could actually get a step ahead. You're not waiting for them to trip over themselves before they learn something was that. they get to know ahead of time. So I think it's a great value add, and that's a great case study and a great example.
Industrial Safety Training Council, the ISTC, is proud to support this podcast. ISTC is the nation's leading industrial workforce compliance organization, and they're committed to the safety of our petrochemical plants, pipelines, and their contractors. You can drop them a line at #IamSafety, and also go back and watch that episode with George Parrott. It was excellent. McDonough Engineering Corporation is a full-service engineering firm specializing in industrial site design, including tank terminal, truck loading facilities, and manufacturing and distribution facilities. They are proud supporters of the Economic Alliance, Houston Port Region, and the podcast. You can check them out at mectx.com. Turner Industries. For over 55 years, Turner Industries employees across the Gulf Coast and beyond have answered the country's toughest industrial challenges. They provide one solution for your success with industrial construction, maintenance, turnaround, pipe and module fabrication, equipment, rigging, and specialized transportation, and associated specialty services. You can learn more at turner-industries.com. And again, we also had Carla Thompson on the show from Turner. It was a phenomenal show. So if you missed that one, go back and...
Bunch of joy.
Oh, she's fun.
Yeah.
It was a fun show. As far as announcements go, the Economic Alliance, Houston Port Region, is having their procurement breakfast along with our media partner, BIC Alliance. If you're a member of the Economic Alliance organization or BIC member, you get to go for free, and it's a very good event. It's one of my highlights. I love going to this event. That'll be on Tuesday, June 18th from 7 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. You can learn more about that at the Economic Alliance website. Also, we have a real good partner with the Petrochem Update. Petrochem Update has their big conference coming up. Supply Chain and Logistic Conference will be here at the George R. Brown on June 11th and 12th. You can learn more at petrochem-update.com. It's a really good conference as well. So, and I believe your organization, y'all got some stuff coming up too, right? You have some announcements.
So you're talking about the next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, so next week I will be at the Texas-Louisiana EHS Seminar and Expo. Jim Wetherbee is a friend of mine when BP's Texas City refinery blew up. Jim came in from NASA. He's an expert on safety, culture, and leadership. Jim realized the complexity and high hazard of petrochem and processing. Retired from NASA, went to work for BP. He and I became good friends. Jim has spoken with several of my clients. He and I will be presenting Monday morning on safety of the next generation workforce. And then Jim is going to be the keynote speaker at lunch on Monday there at the Moody Gardens.
Oh, nice.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
that's exciting.
So come meet an astronaut.
Come what?
Come meet an astronaut.
Come meet an astronaut.
Come meet an astronaut?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said eat an astronaut.
No, meet.
Well, and you talk about competency, right? So Jim is the only 5-time space shuttle commander. He was that competent. Usually you get one command. They gave Jim 5. And then when he retired from spaceflight, they made him director of spaceflight operational readiness. In other words, Jim, make sure all the astronauts behind you are as competent as you are.
Wow,
That's impressive.
that is impressive.
And if there's one place you really want to be competent, it's when you're really, really far, far away from home, right?
Yeah, because we got to get back. That's the completion of the mission. If I can shamelessly plug his book, Controlling Risk in a Dangerous World. For those out there that are working in industry, it's all about operation excellence. Competency of your workforce is just one aspect. You should truly get Jim's book about controlling risk. It's all about his 30 techniques he developed during his career at NASA around how you're successful in your operations in high hazard, high consequence environments.
Very good.
Wow, okay, awesome. Well, that was Jim Weatherbee's, and what was the name of the book again?
Controlling Risk in a Dangerous World.
Fantastic. Check that out online. And so as we're getting close to needing to wrap up, why don't we do a two-pronged question, right? I know I got the chance to read your full bio. I shared some of it on LinkedIn, but tell us a little bit about the man and some of the industry or some of the organizations and things. You're a servant by nature. That's one of the things that I really saw, and you've always stood out. I've gotten a chance to hear you speak at the Petrochem Christian Fellowship Breakfast.
Yep.
And so I was just moved by what you had to share. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about some of the organizations you're part of, and then if you could potentially share just a couple of key things that have led to your success.
Well, growing up in a Christian home, my dad drilled into me about it's not about you. It'll never be about you. It's about all the people that God brings into your life. So how do you make a difference for them? So my wife's already got my gravestone chiseled. It says he tried to make a difference.
Oh,
So that's what I want to do. How do I make a difference? That's why we started the company. How do we pay it forward for our next generation of young people who want to do well? We just have to give them the opportunities, and we have to think differently if we're going to hold on to them. I currently sitting on 7 boards. The majority of those are nonprofit charity boards. Years of taking kids around the country. My dad was a fireman by trade, but firemen and policemen don't make a whole lot of money. So all of those men and women have second and third jobs to make their families run. So Dad was a carpenter on the side for his second and third job, which my grandfather had been a carpenter. And so ultimately I take kids around the country if there's been a tornado, a hurricane, a flood. And for almost 30 years now, we rebuild. And I train these kids to teach them leadership skills, but also how to do plumbing and electrical and carpentry work, but mainly about what it means to give back, and kind of that same motto.
So if you're watching from Dallas, they had some tornadoes yesterday, and you need help, call
Daryl.
Or Tulsa. I know Tulsa got hit pretty hard too. I've got a business associate up in Tulsa and the Oklahoma region. I know they got hit by some really bad storms last week as well.
Well, we just bought our house, and all I'm thinking here is like, I wonder if Daryl would show me how to do carpentry, and electrical work.
Yeah, the one nice thing about having your own company, we literally took off about 6 months after Harvey. I was in my boat for 3 days rescuing people, gutting houses, and then ultimately repairing 51 houses.
Wow.
At no cost to the homeowner. And we were able to get people from 10 different states to come in and volunteer. We raised almost $400,000 to pour back into the community that was donated from across the country.
Wow.
So, yeah, how do we make a difference?
Right. And I think as we get ready to wrap up, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. But again, one of the things that I'm just so enthused and excited about with our region is every time we sit someone in one of these chairs, the one thing that I've observed is whether it be on the show or behind the scenes, there's a lot of people that are committed to the community in this area. And that's really what makes it stand up. Harvey was a great illustration of that. But you see it day in and day out, especially across the Port region and across 225 and all the way up. I mean, everybody's kind of rowing together to try to do what they can to keep people lifted up, keep our industry strong, and help people be successful. So I'm thankful to have you as a part of that. So thank you for sharing that. Clint, any ads?
We want to switch over to attitude of gratitude now, or are we talking
could.
about just let's do attitude of gratitude. So we always like to end the show that way, and so we kind of just go around and share what we've been grateful for. And Jason actually brought his daughter, and I've got my son out in the audience today. And one of the things I'm very grateful for is my children. I know you talk about your kids frequently as well. So as fathers, I'm grateful to have kids. They do a lot to keep us in check because they are typically a reflection of who we hope we are. Is that a good way of putting it?
Right.
So I'm grateful for my children. I mean, I really am. We've got 4 great kids. They work real hard, and I'm grateful to have them in my life.
I'm grateful for my daughter's phone because she's on it right now. I'm kidding. She knows I give her a hard time about it, but no, I'm very humble for my little girl. She's we've got one, but she's my joy, and to have the summer and the flexibility in my job to be able to take her with me a few times. I actually have it on my list this summer. We're going to spend time with folks that are in industry and different works with females, so she can get an understanding and have some time of what career opportunities exist out there, what type of things that she could do as she starts to get older and set her career sights on. So I'm going to engage her this summertime with a lot of people, and I couldn't do that if I was stuck in an office all day. Right. So I'm humble that I can reach out to folks on LinkedIn and say, hey, can we go to breakfast or lunch with you? I'd like you to meet my daughter and tell her about what you do. So I'm humble for that.
Yeah, great. I think for myself, both my boys are pretty much on their own now. So my wife's very active in the community. She and I both volunteer and doing things. I think I'm most grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to share what I've learned, continue to learn, and to pour that back into others. In some very active mentoring relationships right now with young men. I'm going to be holding a workshop this summer for kids in our community to teach them how to weld and how to do woodwork. I love teaching
There you
people
go.
different skills. So I'm thankful for the opportunity that I've had. I've learned a lot of things. I have a lot of experiences. Got the opportunity to travel the world, meet a lot of great people, and then being able to pour that back into others. I really believe our next generation is huge. It's very important. I don't think our millennials get enough credit. So how do we help them have the right heart set, mindset, skill set? So I'm real thankful for the opportunity to do what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, we're thankful to have you on the show today, Daryl. We would wish you continued success and all the great things that you're doing. Guys, make sure to give us any comments or feedbacks on the actual Facebook page for the Economic Alliance. Tune in next week, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have
Have
a
a great
good
day.
Economic Alliance thanks you for tuning in to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and share with your friends.